Hey everybody, Josh here. I'm the guy who makes those story videos that you watch on this channel. I don't often come in front of the camera like this unless it's something that I really want to talk about. And a couple months ago, I made a video covering the entire story of the Clock Tower video game series. And I really fell in love with the series as I was making that video. And just for fun, I reached out to WayForward. They're a video game developer, and they made the new Clock Tower Rewind re-release of the first game in the Clock Tower franchise. This is actually the first time it's ever been released officially in English. Just for fun, I reached out to them and I was like, hey, you guys want to talk about this with me and my buddy Post? We do a podcast together called Bucket Bites. You should go subscribe to it, where we talk to creators, usually in the video game scape, about the things they do. And we got to really pick the brains of Adam and Jeremy at WayForward on not only this game, but a lot of the other projects that they've done over the years, and even what they're going to do in the future. And we got some spicy details on what might be coming, and you could even help it happen, maybe. I threw together some of the best bits of the interview, but you can check out in the description. I'll have the link to the entire interview with Jeremy and Adam from WayForward. It was a fantastic conversation. I had so much fun. And if you're interested in what goes into re-releasing a game from 30 years ago to modern audiences, I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Start with a couple of introductions here. Adam, why don't you go ahead and lead the way? Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Adam Tierney. I'm from WayForward. I've been there about 20 years now, believe it or not. It's pretty much my only adult job. And I came in as an animator, became a director for most of the 20 years. And now I oversee our biz dev and our publishing group.
Excellent. And how about you, Jeremy?
I'm Jeremy Pryor. I am QA manager at WayForward, kind of work on all the different games. I also did some production role on Clock Tower Rewind.
So I'm sure, Jeremy, that given you're obviously a survival horror game fan, I'm sure you obviously were aware of Clock Tower, probably a fan before it came to WayForward.
Yes.
So I was wondering, what was the process like to get Clock Tower remade? Did you go to them? Did they come to you? What did that look like?
Well, actually, I mean, Adam, you might be able to speak to this most, but we
decided on it. Yeah. I mean, basically we did a remake. So most of the remakes that we do are games that we've made originally, but a couple years ago we did what we released as River City Girls Zero, is based on a Super Famicom game called Kunio Tachi no Banka, and it was the first Kunio-kun game that involved the River City Girls characters, kind of inspired our game. We didn't make that game, but we ported it to modern consoles, did the animated intro and all that, and then ever since then we've been talking what is the next game that we wanted to do, and you know, we're typically looking for games that are a lot of people know about them, but have never really received an official US release. And pretty much from the get-go, right at the top of the list was Clock Tower, the original Super Famicom version.
It having won a fandom out here, and the sequels that did make its way out here, and never having the original, but I mean, there were a lot of people, myself included, that played the game through some emulation back in the day, and it was just unlike anything we've ever experienced at that time. So being able to bring that over with new localizations was really exciting.
Can you explain Clock Tower just a little bit? You know, that might be a loaded question, but you know, I've never set foot into the Barrows Mansion before, and what is Clock Tower?
You are one of a handful of girls that's just been adopted by Simon Burroughs, and arrive at his Clock Tower mansion, and things get very unnatural and scary very fast. I don't want to give too much away. There is a reoccurring antagonist that does stalk you throughout your experience as you try to solve the mystery, and there is a lot of choices that you make and actions you could do that change the experience. There's 8 or 9 endings into this game, based on your own actions and how you advance through it.
One of my favorite things about Clock Tower actually is that looking out a window changes your ending.
Yep.
That's
yeah. There's
also one of the endings you can get super early just by kind of doing what I think a lot of us would do in that situation. We won't spoil it, but it's very funny that it's not just you can go 95% of the way through the game and then there's little twists at the very end. No, you can get completely different outcomes very early based on what you do.
Yeah, if you've ever watched a horror movie and you're like, why doesn't the protagonist just do this? Yeah. You can do that. It's actually pretty great.
And I need to know, because I did not play the original, was there anything that was from the original that you guys either cut out or that you have added like unreleased stuff back in, or
Yes, to the second part. So I will say that the original Super Famicom version of the game exists as it did in an original mode. So you could play it all the way like it was, except now with localization. And you could also switch to rewind mode. And a rewind mode, basically there was the original Super Famicom version, and then in Japan they also had a PlayStation 1 port, and they had a PC port. And as they were doing some of the ports, there was some new content that was put in. We actually backported that content back into the original game into the new rewind mode. Rewind mode has a few other quality of life changes and bug fixes, but it also features now content that wasn't in the original Super Famicom version, and even some content that existed in the code but wasn't even being used in the later ports.
A lot of the stuff that's come out over the decades since it was released, from data miners or people just looking at like old behind the scenes materials, anything we can get our hands on, we tried to make it part of that expanded experience.
What goes into your guys' process of finding these things to include in these, in the museum section of, Clock Tower Rewind? Like, how much is preservation part of your process?
Yeah, that's a really good word, and that's how we took it, is this, and also River City Girls Zero, and now we've got a couple other potential projects that we're working on that would be the next kind of game that didn't originate with us, but we're bringing it to a Western audience. It's about preservation, and so that's why, because actually for both of them, for River City Girls Zero and this one, because we were making some changes, we wanted to keep the vanilla version available so that people who just purely want to play exactly what it was, but never had the opportunity, or want to play exactly what it was, but just with an English translation, can do that. And then beyond that, it's really just everything we can find. With River City Girls and Yars Rising and some of our other games, we've really gotten into this style of like motion comic style animation sequences. And rather than do something new on this, Jeremy was aware of like, oh, they'd made some old comics way back when. And it was kind of funny. Like, he and I had to track them down. So they're not just like, available anywhere. Like, one of them is only in a booklet in the collector's edition, PlayStation edition in Japan. And then the other one, we had to get some even more obscure, like mini size strategy guide from Japan from like 20 years ago. And we tracked those down, bought them, scanned them in, and then gave them to our VFX group, and they fully animated them. And that's an area where we were able to cast and add full VO in English.
What was the casting process like for that?
So basically, we knew what the dialogue was from the comics, and we were already getting it localized. And, between Shantae and River City Girls, we really have casting kind of down to a science for how we like to do it. We did full casting for Jennifer because we are hoping that if this goes really well, that maybe we can do a full new Clock Tower game in the future. And it would be great to know, Jennifer's VA for that. And then the rest were kind of grabbing people that we had worked with recently or that we were connected with.
You kind of answered one of my questions, was if you guys had any thoughts or desires to like take this opportunity with this IP and maybe make a whole new Clock Tower. Like, is that kind of the hope and intention maybe?
I mean, the hope with any game that we do is that we get to do more of them. Like, I can't think of a single game we've done where we're like, oh, we don't want to touch this again. We always want to have the possibility of doing more of them. But yeah, with this one, there have been the sequels, and then there was the Haunting Grounds kind of pseudo sequel. But we really would like to do something that taps into the original, either a remake of it or something that is just like a WayForward version of it. And when you get to the end credits, or when you load up the end credits for the game, not the original game's end credits, but our credits, we had told Mariel that she had to do some kind of visual for it. And what she settled on was she reanimated the core mobility of Jennifer, but doing it high-res 2D animation. And she said after she had worked on that to us that, oh yeah, part of why I did that is I wanted to get it in people's minds what Jennifer in these actions might look like in HD, so that people start kind of, chatting about like, oh, they should do like a full-on sequel for it. So hopefully that works.
Was it difficult to, like, you guys decided, hey, we want to do this. This was all internal. You wanted to do this. Was it difficult to get access to the IP?
I think on this one it was because we work with Limited Run quite a bit. They do most of our physicals, and I think they had just signed a broader deal with Sunsoft. So we had some good early meetings with Sunsoft, and also an early meeting with Kono-san, the director of the game. And so before we did any real major work, I got to have lunch with him in Japan, and we got to talk about the project. And then later on, we actually got him more formally involved, and even sat him down for an interview on the title.
Yeah, I mean, I will also note that when Adam had that lunch, he got my copy of Clock Tower signed.
Nice.
In the other room.
Yes.
But yeah, no, we got to do the interview. We did have also another horror streamer, Selena. We got her involved to do the interview, and we got a lot of questions from between us. And we also went to some popular fans and asked them, like, hey, if you had the chance to ask a question, what would it be? So we took a bunch of questions, gave them all to him, and did that whole interview with him, which was fantastic.
I was wondering, how far along in the process was he aware, and what was his reaction to learning that it was, coming to a modern audience?
He was aware of it very early on. So I don't remember exactly if it was before or after we signed with Sunsoft, but it was the very first lunch around Tokyo Game Show was before we were in full production on it, for sure. So it was like right at the start of it. Then we also had him contracted as a consultant too. So over the course of the project, if we had any questions for him, or at one point we were kind of clarifying about the original cover art, and is this supposed to be Mary or Jennifer, and is there any do we have access to the original source art or anything like that? Whenever we had questions about the original production, we could hit him up about that. But yeah, he was involved from pretty close to the beginning. I don't remember whether it was like immediately after or before it became a formal project, but like 2 years ago now, I think.
Just out of curiosity, if you guys had like unlimited resources on this thing, would you still have done it pretty much the same way you did it, or would you have done something bigger?
I mean, if we had a full budget, I think we would do a full production, but I think this might have always been the first step, because what we don't want to do is just barge in and change everything and overhaul it, or at least we want to be very careful about that. I mean, we have had something like, I think everybody generally liked our DuckTales remastered game, and that was just jumping straight to the remastered version. Or you take something like River City Girls, where we're kind of putting our version of Kunio-kun River City Ransom out there. But yeah, I mean, this would be my preferred approach, is doing something like this where we're really being very respectful to the original one, and letting people first experience the original version of it rather than just jumping straight to the WayForward version. That said, yeah, if somebody wants to give us a couple $1 million, we'll dive right into doing the full sequel.
The people on the internet are kind of crazy, so like, especially like dedicated fans to any kind of IP or any kind of game, movie, what media, right? So
trust me, I know.
Speaking of the people, how has the response been this far?
So far, all I've seen has been positive myself.
Yeah, I think the only thing that has been not even negative, but every now and then we'll see like a Steam comment from somebody saying, "Oh, it looks so old. Like they could have at least redone the visuals, or they could have at least redone the controls or something." But then almost 100% of the time, then somebody else, not even a WayForward employee, jumps in and says, no, this is cool. Like, this is why, and they're preserving it, and they want us to experience it. So I think, if anything, just the job that Jeremy and the rest of our publishing group have done in terms of messaging is really resonating, because it really seems to be taking on that people are like, oh, okay, they're not just trying to make this the most modern version possible. They're trying to preserve this and then expand the audience for people that never formally got to play it.
Just circling back around, I did want to talk about the opening animation as well. How did you pick the scenes and what to show, and how to re-envision these 2D side-scrolling cutscenes, if you can call them that, into a full 2D animation?
Geez, I don't know the best that either of us are the best to answer that. I think Mariel
No, yeah,
a lot of
most
that.
of it. Yeah, most of it kind of came from Mariel. So she directed the sequence and also did most of the hand animation herself, and then worked with other artists in terms of like the backgrounds and the coloring and stuff. But I think it was just looking at everything we had and looking for those iconic moments, and she kind of strung it all together.
She did a really good job. Like, she picked out so many, and some of them very quick shots, but like every kind of iconic location, to the point where, like, when we were circling back and getting achievement art made, I realized, well, we have all that art. It's the opening. You literally have screenshots for almost every single area where I put some kind of achievement or a reference to something. It's like, we already have it. We don't even need anything.
The one thing that we did do before she kind of got started is we produced the song before she started working on the visuals. And so we knew that we wanted 2 original vocal songs, because that's just kind of what we've been doing recently on our products. And, you know, it's great to, again, collaborate with really talented people. And so myself, as like a big Silent Hill fan over the years, I immediately from the beginning of this project said, we got to get Mary McGlynn to do the singing, because she's, you know, in my mind, she's the voice of horror in terms of singing all of her amazing Silent Hill songs. So we were already connected with her. We had worked with her on a couple of projects, including a Silent Hill project, and reached out, and she was totally down to do our vocals. So we did that first. We got the song in place, and then from there Mariel took that and started figuring out visuals for it.
I'm glad you brought up the song, because it, like, that theme is so iconic to the Clock Tower series, but like that melody you wouldn't think to add lyrics to. It's just like this fast-paced thing that's kind of heart-racing that gets you going because you're being chased, and somehow arranging that into a title theme that has, and I mean this as a compliment, but like a haunting Bond theme type vocal over it is just, it shouldn't make sense, and it does, and it's perfect.
We like just being weird and experimenting, and I mean, my God, it's like, even if you've never heard any of Mary's songs before, how immediately just entrancing is her voice. There's no voice like hers, other than we got another incredible singer for the end credits,
Emmy Evans. Yeah, she's obviously I think most known for Nier. Really amazing, and that song that surprised a lot of people.
It's almost like the first song is more about like the experience in the house, but the second song feels very specific to Jennifer, like as a character. Yeah. I think.
So is there any things that you wanted to include but couldn't?
I can't think. I mean, can you think of anything that got left on the floor?
Nothing that got left on the floor. I mean, obviously there's always like, I'd love to do more. I would love for this to have the PS1 First Sphere port, the PS1 audio, the Wonder Swan version, the Windows version, all the goofy stuff that no one would ever really play. Mm-hmm. But just to have, but it was never like the plan with this. The plan with this was to give the definitive way to play the original, preserve that, and give like, hey, here's a fun new version of it.
So I do have to ask, so looking forward, what's the dream remake in the future?
We can't say a lot of them because we're exploring.
I don't mean something you're doing. I just mean in your brain.
So I mean the one. Well, there's one that we can say just because it started as the number one on our list, and we'll never be able to do it.
Yeah, we would love if it was possible. If it was possible, it's not possible. We would love to bring Sweet Home to audiences out in the U.S. Obviously, that one is, I mean, it's the reason why Resident Evil even exists to this day. But, I mean, we looked into it. It was our number one choice. We looked into it. It's just not possible for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, less so about the game and more about the movie it's based on and some of the rights issues around there.
By the way, I do want to thank you for bringing up Book of Memories at one point. That game does not get enough credit, and it deserves it.
Thank you.
That was like probably, I played through all of the Silent Hill games, and that was the last one I played because I had to figure out how to capture it. But when I played it, it was a perfect refresher over everything, and I loved it. So thank you for that. And also The Brave and the Bold, because that's my favorite Batman game.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're very proud of both of those. The Silent Hill one was weird because, you know, if we could have done any Silent Hill game, we would have done a pretty traditional one, or like a traditional one with like an interesting story. But I think we've said in interviews a number of times, like that was the assignment. So when it came to us, it was like, you know, hey, Konami wants you to do a Silent Hill, and they want you to do a 4-player auto-generated multiplayer, you know, dungeon crawler from an overhead perspective. So like all that was built into it. We actually tried at the beginning to make it as faithful as possible, and it just didn't work, because, you know, when you're zoomed out in like a Diablo 3 perspective, then like a slow walking nurse in a hallway is just like, well, hurry up and get over here. And so it was we kind of had this identity crisis at one point where I think it was about maybe a third of the way into development, and I remember just, you know, talking with the group, and it's like, it's not going to work. We gotta embrace the fun. And so that's when at that point we, you know, started making things more arcadey, making them run around, making things explode, making it more, you know, almost Smash TV like. And of course, from one perspective, that makes it even more sacrilege, because it's like, oh my God, that is not what I wanted from Silent Hill at all. But you know, at the end of the day, we had to make the best game possible for what the game was. I've definitely, I like what we came up with, but I definitely have like conflicted emotions about it, because, you know, it was very clearly despised by a lot of the established gamers, just because it was such a 180 from what they wanted. But, you know, at the end of the day, we still made a Silent Hill game, so that's a cool little notch on WayForward's belt.
That's good to have on your resume. But and again, like, it was a departure for sure. But I loved what it captured about, like, the book of memories actually in the plot. Like, I love that as a plot device. And I just love the game as a portable, you know, Vita title. That platform did not get enough, you know.
No, and we got to do early on with it. It wasn't a launch title, but it was a launch window one, I believe. Came out like maybe within the first year, and you know, doing stuff like doing anything with a morality meter, that's awesome. Like, you know, like, again, going back to like what Clock Tower was doing and kind of kicked off for that, you know, the horror industry, having your actions make you veer towards one direction or another in terms of endings. We got to play with a lot of that stuff. I remember, I think in like your constant morality meter of good versus evil in Book of Memories, I think it was something like, Jeremy, it's like a dozen factors that are like factoring into it at one point. It's like which enemy you're attacking, and your alignment, and the weapon, and your buffs, and the story choices you made. So like every time you stab an enemy or punch an enemy, how your meters are affected is like a dozen different things all kind of like gelling together. So it was cool to play with that stuff. And then it was also, I really liked the little spooky scare rooms. But that was kind of, we put those in a bit to basically be, all right, we can't do a traditional Silent Hill, but what if you go into a room and for like 2 minutes it's a traditional Silent Hill? So little things like that. We tried to appeal to the Silent Hill fans and ourselves as much as possible.
And I will defend that game forever.
Which game is that? Which game is that?
Silent Hill Book of Memories on the Vita.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
Which is apparently incredibly expensive now too.
It's going up in value, yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I can't find my copy, and I need to I need to
like
buy more
like
presents. I need to have my roster of I have the games right here that I've worked on, and I'm missing that one, and I'm like, oh, I'll just buy it off eBay, and it's like, oh, they went like $200 for it. So.
And I'll send you mine for $180.
I might have to take you up on that.
All right. Well, cool. I guess just before we wrap it up, I'm gonna leave the floor to you guys just to, if there's anything else you wanted to mention about the game yourselves. We'll start with Adam.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having us on. You know, we're just so humbled and appreciative to Sunsoft and Kono-san and LRG and Carbon Team that we could even do something like this, because, you know, when we pitched the idea of this whole kind of Port Plus approach with Kunio-Tachi no Banka, the previous one, it took a lot of explaining, because it's like, well, we didn't make the game, but we want to do this, but we do want to change this and add this, and, you know, people really embraced us on that game. So yeah, hopefully this one resonates with people. Definitely, we were surprised from the announcement on the number of like reactions we get from people on social media and in person and reviews and everything, like rivals our original productions, which just blew our minds. Like, we're getting as much feedback on our Clock Tower games as we are on like a brand new Shantae or River City game, which is, it shows that the audience is, you know, there. So hopefully people go out and buy it and enjoy it, and, you know, tell your friends about it. And definitely, like, that is a direct, it's cheesy to say, but that is the direct path for us making more of these. You know, if this is a huge hit, both Sunsoft and WayForward want to make something new with Clock Tower. So check that out and tell your friends about it if you haven't experienced it already.
I will be preaching it from any rooftop that'll have me.
And I mean, I can't really add too much more to that. I mean, Adam said that all perfectly. And also, I want to thank the both of you for inviting us to do this. Because, yeah, no, it's really awesome. I always love talking about Clock Tower.
Well, I'm glad you guys were here. You know, I guess that's gonna wrap it up.
Hey everybody, if you've made it this long, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. This was about half of the interview, so if you're interested in hearing the rest, link in the description below. Make sure you check it out. As mentioned in the interview, if you're interested in more Clock Tower, tell your friends, Clock Tower Rewind, go check it out. Link also in the description. And again, a huge thanks to both Adam and Jeremy from WayForward. It was such a good time. As a longtime fan of WayForward, it blew my mind having a chance to talk to these guys. So go check them out. Go check out all the stuff WayForward does. Make sure you check out Clock Tower Rewind. Thank you guys so much. See you soon with one of my actual videos.